Well, thank you for joining us again on Florida Foodie. I'm your host, Candace Campos, along with our producer, Thomas Mates.
Hello, all.
All right, well, listen, reducing food waste and the amount of garbage sent to landfills, those are two big goals behind the sustainability movement. Leaders in Orlando are pushing towards the goal of becoming a zero-waste city. And the private sector is stepping in to make that happen. So today we are joined by Charlie Pioli, the founder of OTown Compost, to talk about just that. Thank you so much for joining us.
No, thank you so much for having me, Candace and Thomas.
Yeah, and compost is kind of a dirty topic, I guess you could say, because it's food waste. And so can you give us an idea of you turn what into what?
So yeah, OTown Compost is a small business that was started with two goals in mind. The first was to divert food waste into finished compost, and that finished compost is intended to go to the local agriculture scene here in Orlando. Local projects such as fleet farming, Orlando permaculture, just community gardens at schools, and it's a great way to, take a lot of methane out of the atmosphere and do the right thing with our nutrient-rich food waste.
And how much time does it take to to turn food into reusable soil?
Well, my new right now I just started OTown Compost about a month ago, and it's just a man and a pitchfork. But I would say
He's the man. He didn't bring the pitchfork.
Next on my list is to build a aerated static pile compost system. I recently was out in Portland, Oregon, where they have a great, robust composting system for both residential people and commercial clients, and I got the privilege to tour their composting facility, and this aerated static pile is a way to force oxygen into the compost piles and essentially save a lot of labor. And I only have one back, so
you need a little help, that's for sure. Yeah.
So composting, a lot like recycling, it's not as easy necessarily as people think it is. Like, you can't just throw anything in there. Like we've recently done a lot of stories about how like people are throwing like pizza boxes in with their recycling, and then that recycling has to go to the dump because it's been contaminated.
That.
Yes. And so similarly with composting, there's do's and don'ts. Can you kind of walk us through that?
Sure. And that's interesting you mentioned recycling, because I'm coming from the waste and recycling industry, where currently in Orange County they're rolling out a curbside recycling monitoring program. And I just spent my early morning from 5 a.m. to about 9 a.m. trying to beat the collection trucks and lift the lid of people's recycling carts and really check what they're throwing away isn't contamination. So same is applied to compost. There can be contamination involved, and compost is not, it's really a two-part formula. You have your greens, your nitrogens, and then you have your browns, your carbons, and mixing those two together creates a decomposition that can only be done, simultaneously. And the finished product is, something beautiful, this rich black hummus, aka black gold. And, here in Orlando, I'm calling it OTown Black Gold.
I like it. Okay, so you keep talking about your company, OTown Compost. First off, congratulations on its birth.
Yeah, thank you.
It's like a child. So you started this. How does it work? It's a kind of a subscription service, right?
Yeah, we have really two services right now, with hopes to expand into the commercial sector soon. But we have our residential service and our zero waste event service. I'll just start with zero waste event service because, it's easy peasy. If you're getting married or having a birthday party or a corporate event and you want to make a low environmental impact, we can be there to not only recycle your food waste, but I will provide you compostable serviceware that works for my system that, some PLA plastic serviceware is, it breaks down, but it just breaks into further plastic microbeads. So I have a select type of serviceware that I prefer for my composting. And also, I'll give you a report at the end of the event, let you know how you did, how close you got to zero waste, or it's really it's progress to become zero waste. And our residential service is, our big one. We have a handful of subscribers so far, and I've been getting a lot of interest from zip codes outside our service area. Right now, our service area is from UCF to I-4, and if you go to our website, you'll see the zip codes we service. But it starts with us dropping off a 5-gallon bucket with our cute logo on the front. There's a compostable liner and an airtight lid to prevent any odors or pests. And you ideally keep that in your kitchen, fill it up with your kitchen scraps, your leftovers, trimmings from making dinner or coffee grounds, tea bags, even grandma's casserole after Thanksgiving. So you fill that up, and then either weekly or bi-weekly, you bring that to your porch where we'll swap it out for a new one. It's almost just like trash or recycling collection. Right. You have your OTown Compost collection. And then, twice a year, we will bring you back finished compost. So it's really a cyclical service that gives people the option to not only divert their food waste the proper way, but to receive finished compost if they like to garden, or if you don't have a backyard, like I don't at some points in my life.
Right.
You can just choose to donate it to a local urban agriculture project.
And who are you working with right now as far as like getting that compost donated to people? You mentioned Fleet Farming and those people. Are you already in the works with them, or are there others?
Fleet Farming and Ideas for Us have been great in supporting my venture, and they see it aligns really well. And Lee Perry has been huge for me, so shout out. But not only that, Orlando Permaculture has Eco Action Days where they'll go out to, low-income apartment buildings or the Audubon Park Church and really grow food for the community. People are just allowed to really pick whatever they want for the garden, or it ends up in a community potluck that feeds the community.
That's amazing. I mean, it's very much, full circle. And when we were talking before we started taping the podcast, you said you're originally from Pacific Northwest, where that's what they're known for. They're known for how green they are. And so how did it start? When you moved here to Orlando and you said, this is what I want to do, how did it all begin?
Well, yeah, that's a great question. About 3 years ago, I was a university student in Boston, and I was subscribing to a similar food waste collection service called Bootstrap Compost. And I just knew I was super passionate about sustainability, and got this job that brought me down to Orlando. And, right off the bat, I'm like, whoa, I don't want to be here for long.
We're not very good at that whole sustainability thing.
Yeah, but now that I'm deeper into the sustainability scene, I see huge potential. And, potential I could have never tapped into if I was in Portland, where they're already doing a lot of these things. Portland, Oregon has a curbside composting system where people can add their food waste to their yard waste. And we currently don't have anything like that. So after moving to Orlando, I've been working at a waste and recycling consultant near UCF, and recently just stepped away from my full-time salaried position to take the plunge into OTown Compost and, do what I feel is right for the environment and for a city like Orlando. I've been speaking to Brittany McPeak, who is the city's food waste coordinator, and she, as well as I, both want one day to have Orlando like Portland, Oregon, with a curbside composting for the universal resident of Orlando.
I mean, if you think about how much food waste, not only in residential homes, but also in places like the theme parks and our restaurant, I mean, we have so many different kind of entities here in Central Florida that, I mean, could be tapped into for so many reasons.
Yeah, and you said your coverage area currently is from UCF to I-4. Are you working with UCF at all on any of this, or are they an aspiration? I know you said you wanted to get more towards the commercial side of things as well.
Yeah, believe me, I just started, but UCF is, on my short list, and I've been speaking with the Ideas for Us UCF chapter to start a free drop-off, like 1 time a week, 2 hours. Students, faculty are allowed to bring their food waste just to drop it off for free. I see it as like a great program for students who might not necessarily have the money to subscribe for a monthly collection program, or they just don't generate enough food waste to really make it worth their while. But we're going to set up a booth near the Student Union every Wednesday and start accepting food waste, and it should take off from there. And yeah, to your point, Candace, about the sheer amount of food waste. One thing I learned being in the waste industry, that food waste and organic waste makes up the vast majority of what goes to the landfill or incinerator, about 40%. And Disney is already are taking their food waste to an anaerobic digester, so they're doing a good job of handling that. But you can imagine that commercial, like restaurants around Orlando, they probably generate like a ton of food waste each day, and there's not really many outlets for them. And I'm gonna hopefully target that sector and step in after a couple of years.
I mean, supply and demand, there's certainly a lot of supply, and for sure there's demand, because at the end of the day, this is our planet. This is something we need to kind of keep living in, and having kids and looking at the future, you start really realizing that. And I never thought about food waste years ago, and then all of a sudden I started having kids and things, and realizing how much food really goes into that trash. So are there things like, okay, you can't put in bread, or is there anything that you're like, okay, this is a big no-no in the food compost?
Yeah. I'm just getting into this, and I've been feeling it out the last couple months, and everyone's told me don't accept meat, fish, dairy. That will just your neighbors will complain because it'll be smelly and it doesn't break down right. But after, a little experimentation, I realized that like vegetable and fruit waste, it also, with the right amount of oxygen and turning and the right conditions, will break down just as well. So once I roll out this new composting method, I am going to open it up to all forms of food waste. Paper plates, napkins are okay. Of course, no plastic or metal, anything that basically the slogan is if it grows, it goes. So
gotcha. That's actually really interesting. Okay, so where are you doing all this composting at?
So I have a half-acre property out near UCF.
Okay.
But the beauty of community composting, and I'm not sure the other community composters around the nation are doing this, but I'm going to make this a very decentralized system. Out in East Orlando, where I'm currently located, it would never be cost-effective to drive out to West Orlando, like Widmere, Winter Gardens. So I've been talking with a guy who owns a tree service out in West Orlando who's enthused about this business, and he wants to create a composting system of his own out there. So he volunteered to handle that waste, and I see this can be replicated with all the horse stables out in East Orlando, or livestock pastures. And manure is already like the biggest headache for these stable owners. So you'd be killing 2 birds with 1 stone by creating compost and essentially taking care of their manure
So you're essentially
problem.
franchising it out around the area.
Yeah,
That's smart.
very decentralized, local, rather than what big waste haulers are currently doing these days, like your Waste Management in Republic, which is having one centralized location where their diesel guzzling trucks are hauling it from all over the central Florida to one location, and it's just not really efficient or environmentally friendly, despite what they say in their greenwashing campaigns. Don't let me go in on the big waste haulers.
Don't even get him started. I mean, so when you're talking about a compost system, I mean, how big is it? Does it take up an entire, room? Do you need an acre of property? Like, I mean, I'm so green when it comes to about this, but I mean, how much work and space does it take to compost?
Yeah, surprisingly, it doesn't take a whole lot. I'm building these bins that are, 4 foot by 4 foot, and they're really a small footprint. And if you are pumping enough oxygen into the piles, you can have finished compost in about 60 days. So you can move the finished compost to a holding area and continue with the next batch. So it's really, I looked at that composting facility in Portland, and it's nothing like that. It's small, it's local, and it's not unsightly either. These bins are actually really nice looking.
Yeah. And how do you inject all this oxygen and stuff into it?
That's a funny question, because I just bought a bouncy castle blower at Home Depot.
Okay.
And you hook up a timer to that, and 1 minute every hour it just blows air into the pile.
I was thinking you're sitting there, like blowing a pile of yourself. So good bouncy castle blowers sound a little better,
right.
a little more efficient.
Yeah. I mean, you described yourself as the business as one man with a pitchfork, so I just sort of pictured you like turning it over, just like perpetually. I don't even know how you'd find
like
the time.
tossing a salad.
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, that was
Disgusting
me.
salad.
That was me. Yeah.
But it's so awesome. And then also kind of that franchising. I mean, the sky is your limit if you think about it, because I mean, how many other people are doing this? I mean, how many residents are composting their food? I mean, it doesn't seem like it's going to be a big percentage.
Yeah, I've been talking with a lot of people, and there's really two potential clients who would subscribe for OTown Compost, and it's the people who have tried backyard composting and have been unsuccessful, or the people who haven't even started composting, but they understand that the environment is in crisis and they really want to do their part. So I'm hope to really educate residents around Orlando, because this is something new, and that's a big challenge we've been facing with OTown Compost, is gaining people's trust and educating people so that they know this isn't like a shot in the dark. This can actually make a big difference.
Have you encountered a lot of skepticism from people, or people are just like, I'm just not interested?
Thinking it's like a gimmick.
Yeah.
Well,
Yeah.
I went to like the Small Business Association in the Fashion Square Mall. They encourage startup entrepreneurs to go there to really get the lay of the land, talk with a consultant who can help guide you. And, within the first 5 minutes of meeting my consultant, he just laughed at the idea and said, no one would ever sign up for that. And then proceeded to tell me about the best steakhouses in Orlando. So, that was sobering, because I realized not everyone is for this type of thing.
Yeah.
And, I mean, there's value in every little interaction I have with people.
And knowledge is power, because I mean, when Thomas came up with the, came to me with this idea of compost, I was like, okay, like, so what do you do? I'm thinking farming, I'm thinking, manure and that stuff. But really, this is from your backyard, from inside your home to your backyard. I mean, really.
Yeah. Thomas, you must have some previous experience in compost.
Well, I know that the city of Orlando also offers, the backyard compost, as you're saying, and my fiance is very big into, like home planting and some gardening and things like that. And so, of course, we signed up immediately as soon as we found out that this was an option. And as we also recently came from Portland, Oregon, so having the compost there was like, it was nice to know that it was going somewhere aside from a landfill. So it's been something we've been trying to do, and it was nice to see that Orlando also wants to move the needle on that, as it were, because my hometown, nothing like this, no semblance of it, and considering northeastern Pennsylvania, where I'm from, very rural outside of my hometown, but you would think that it would be like a natural fit, but no.
I mean, Orlando used to be, at least East Orlando used to be nothing but farmland or horse stables for livestock, so there's been huge development ever since, Disney moved in around 1970, and some ecosystems have been damaged in East Orlando or around town. So really, we're just trying to rebuild that, and it seems like a natural fit given the quality of the soil. And it's true what they say, soil is life. It is the beginning. So
it's the base, if you think about it. Anything. I mean, the soil, you have to start from the bottom. I mean, and you're literally starting from the bottom.
Yeah.
So what are the long-term goals? You've talked about, decentralizing and franchising and just getting more people involved. Like, are there other services you're looking to provide beyond compost in the long run, or are you just very focused on that at the moment?
Well, I would say composting, and it's my big goal just to divert as much food waste as I can. Right now, I'm just diverting, maybe 100 pounds a week, which is great. But
huge.
If you look at the need and how much food waste is actually going to the Orange County landfill, I need to start diverting in the tons range. So that is my ultimate goal. And, when the city of Orlando and Orange County's government decides that they're ready to shift to some kind of curbside organics program for residents, or they want to, just like cities like Austin, Texas, Portland, New York, DC, they want to institute a commercial food waste ban. I want to be there and have the infrastructure in place to really be able to bid on a city contract like that. So I think that's a few years in the future, but that's what I'm looking towards.
But like what we were saying, Central Florida, specifically the Orlando area, they're not straying away from the plastic bag bans and the plastic straws, and you could tell that everyone's moving towards that sustainability and towards bettering our future here. So if people are listening and they're inspired and they want to either help or want to also use you for composting, how can they get involved? How can they sign up? How much is it? What do they need to know?
Yeah, I would direct people to my website, OTown Compost.com. And, there's the services tab, which directs people to either the residential service or the zero waste event service. And, we have a Facebook page, Instagram, Twitter. I've just been trying to bombard the city of Orlando with my compost bucket and pass out flyers to get people on board. And if you don't fall in one of our service zip codes, I encourage you to go to the contact page on our website and just drop a little line saying what zip code you're in. And, if enough people from that zip code say they're interested, that means I need to get out there. So
it'd be great to, if you have these Facebook pages, these HOAs and things like that if you can get enough people in your neighborhood, if you have a large enough neighborhood, you can almost start the domino effect there too.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and that is something I've been involved in. A apartment complex manager just contacted me. It's a 250 unit apartment complex in Winter Park, and they're interested in creating some kind of composting in their multifamily units. And I have a program that I think would really work well for apartment complexes. It's traditionally really hard to get people living in apartments to recycle properly because they got to bring it out to the dumpsters.
Right. It's a little more work.
Yeah, it's a little bit more work. But that would be one fell swoop. And for anyone listening, if you're in a HOA, petition your HOA, or you're in an apartment complex, petition your property managers. We could bring composting to a lot of people real quickly. And, there's a little worry about contamination in apartment complexes, forcing people who don't want to compost to compost is, ultimately not what I want to do. I don't want to force people,
Right,
but,
of course.
there would be economic incentive programs, like what they do in a lot of northeastern cities where you pay for your garbage based on the size of the cart that you put out to the curb. People with smaller carts obviously pay less. So, if you're going to pay for if you don't want to participate in the compost service, you're going to have more trash and you would pay more.
Right.
But if you were choosing to participate in the compost, you would be given a little economic incentive.
Yeah,
So.
but even like homes in different neighborhoods, because a bunch of people can, join in, and different homeowners, and so it doesn't just have to be in apartment complexes if you think about it.
Yeah.
Awesome.
That's all I've got.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much. So again, it's o-towncompost.com. Thank you so much for talking with us, Charlie. And I've learned so much. I hope a lot of people are inspired and they do their part, their little their own little footprint in this sustainability.
Yeah, thank you so much for bringing me on the podcast.
Yeah.
And I just want to mention for any of your listeners that use the promo code at checkout, Orange Blossom, one word, all caps, and you will get your first month of service for free. So I hope that's enough of a nudge to get you to start composting.
That's a good incentive.
Fantastic.
Awesome.
Great.
Thank you so much.
Awesome.
Thank
Good
you.
job. Yeah.
Excellent. Thank you for listening to Florida Foodie. We'd also like to thank our guest today, Charlie Pioli from OTown Compost. You can find OTown Compost on Facebook and at otowncompost.com. Our host is Candace Campos. Please follow her online as well. You can find her on Twitter. Just search @CandaceNews6, and on Facebook, search Candace Campos News 6. We'd also like to thank our technical producers, Derek Mosier and Ryan Haley. I'm the show's producer, Thomas Mates. Please take the time to rate and review us wherever you get your podcasts. You can find videos of all of our podcasts on clickorlando.com/podcasts.